If you own the xTool S1 or you're thinking about getting it, this video is for you. Today I'm going to help you get started. We are doing a beginner-friendly project using some of the most common features in xTool Studio. I am going to walk you through everything from turning the machine on to completing the project. The goal of this video is to give you the confidence you need to start creating with this machine. Hey there, I'm Sarah. You're watching Creative Ramblings. We talk a lot about lasers on this channel. In fact, I have a whole bunch of videos already on the xTool S1. In today's video, we are going to do a beginner project. Now, I already have some videos out there on a beginner project, but the difference with this one is we are using xTool Studio. This is the new xTool software that rolled out in September of 25. The previous videos I have on S1 projects use XCS, which was xTool Creative Space. That was the old software. So if you are brand new to xTool, you've just got your hands on an S1, this is the video you want to watch. So we are going to use xTool Studio to walk us through a project from start to finish. This is the project we are making. It's a little like place card or nameplate to put on a table. In the shape of a tree, it comes in two pieces, and we use both cutting and engraving. So cutting and engraving are the most popular things you're going to use. There is also scoring and photo engraving. Photo engraving is a completely different beast, and I do have a full video on how to photo engrave within xTool Creative Space, and then I touch on it in the xTool Studio video. So if you want to know more about how to put photos on material, take a look at that video. But today, we're going to make this. My S1 has the 40-watt laser module. The S1 comes in a 10, 20, and 40 watt. This video is applicable to any of those. Your settings that show up in Studio software are just going to be a little bit different than mine if you have either the 10 or the 20 watt. The biggest difference between those three is speed and cutting thickness. So the 10 watt is going to move a little bit slower than the 20 watt. That's going to move a little slower than the 40 watt. The 40 watt can also cut through really, really thick wood. The 10 watt is going to cut through thinner wood. All three modules are diode lasers. They can do pretty much the same thing, just not as thick with the lower laser modules, and the lower laser modules are going to go a little bit slower. So the first thing we want to do is prep our machine. So my machine is on. It is plugged in. It is turned on. I flipped the little switch in the back. Now on my S1, I have this right here. This is an inline fan. It helps pull some of the extra smoke out of the machine, and then I vent out my window right here. You may not need the inline fan. I really like it. I have a whole video on how I set this up, so that's why my machine looks like this. I also have the honeycomb inside of the bed here. I like using the honeycomb for cutting. Sometimes the S1 will also come with slats you can put down, but you don't want to put your wood flat on the base plate. You want to lift it up just a little bit. It's where the honeycomb or the slats come in. The piece of wood I'm using is not new. It's been used, and that's on purpose because I want to show you how to mark around this and get the most out of your wood. Now I am using true flat plywood. It is very, very flat. This is from MakerFlow. I'm going to link it down below. I really, really like this. You are guaranteed every piece of wood you get is flat. They're really good sized. It's wood fiber on the inside, and then it's finished on the outside. So you can get this, I think this is maple. There's a walnut. You can get it black or white. There's a couple different options for this here. When you're making projects, the quality of your materials matter. If you use cheap, inexpensive materials, your end product probably is going to look a little cheap. If you use high quality wood and materials, you're going to have better looking projects. As always, I recommend maybe starting with some cheap basswood just to understand the functions of the machine. I have a ton of scrap basswood that I use for that, but for a good quality piece, we're going to use some true flat. So I'm going to set this in my machine. I can really set it anywhere. I like to line it up with the bottom ruler of my honeycomb, And then I'm gonna pull the laser over until this red crosshair is somewhere over the middle of the material that's in the machine. You can get some of these clips. You will get a couple with your honeycomb. They're magnetic, they're pretty strong, and you can push them into your honeycomb and they just hold everything down flat. Now this plywood is completely flat. I don't need these, but if you're using something and you're getting a little warping, make sure you're pushing it down and keeping it flat because that will affect your projects. So we're gonna close the lid and now we're gonna open up xTool Studio.
This is the home screen of xTool Studio. I've got some projects I've recently worked on. And then if we go down here, we've got some templates. I am signed in up in the top corner up here. My picture's not showing for some reason, but I am signed in. So I recommend doing that just to make sure you can save and take advantage of any features that are out there. I do have an in-depth video on xTool Studio. If there is something that I don't cover in this video, something that you want more detail on, definitely go and check that out. Today we are going to be working from a template. So we're going to go all the way over to the left over here to templates. This is a great way to get started. You don't need to design anything. These are just here for you. There are a ton of options. You can sort by theme, by category. You can use this filter button. I always like to click on free. Then there's a ton of other ways that you can narrow this down. And you're going to get a whole bunch of options of places that you can start. So I have bookmarked something that I want to try today. This is a piece that involves both cutting and engraving. It's going to make a little name card. So maybe if I had some friends over for dinner, I could put these on their little places. But we're going to use it today because it has cutting and engraving. Over on the right here, it tells me what machines it's compatible with. And because it's wood, it's going to be compatible with just about everything. And then they're telling me what material they use to make this. So now I'm going to click open. I can either open up the file or open up the SVG. I'm going to choose to open the SVG here. And this will take me to the canvas where I can start designing. So here is my little piece. And if I click on it, right up on the top, it tells me the width and the height, which I think the height, about 3.5 inches, is pretty good for a name card. Now, just like the example, I want to add a name to that. So over on the left are where all the different tools are for adding things to your canvas. We are going to start with text. And after I type the text, I can come up to the top and pick the font. Now, all kinds of xTool fonts are going to be in here, but then also any system fonts that I have. So anything that's downloaded on the computer I'm working on is going to be in here. So I can pick something I like. And then there's a couple other ways on here to work with text. You can also size it larger or smaller just by pulling things around or by pulling the corners around. Now I'm going to copy and paste that just using my keyboard, and I'm going to make a couple more. So we'll make 4 of these. Those are the different names that I want to use. Now, ideally, we are going to cut the tree and then engrave the name right on top of the tree there. You'll see right now that everything is red. We're going to change that. So I'm going to select all of the names here, right click, and I'm going to move it to a different color. So let's make those blue. And now down in the left, I have a blue section and a red section. And I can click on blue, it'll highlight all the blues. I can click on red, it'll highlight all the reds. The other thing I want to do now that I have 4 names, I need 4 trees. So let's duplicate that. Because these are 2 pieces and they're going to slot together, the top here and the bottom here, I want to make sure that if I change the sizing on any of these, that I change them together so that they still attach when we cut them. So I've got my trees, I've got my names. Now let's go over on the right. So we are using the xTool S1. And when I opened my software, that machine automatically connected because that's what I was using last time. If it is not connected, you click this little device button here, you pick your machine from down here, and then it will connect. You can also click these three buttons right here, go to device settings, and there would be something up on top that said Wi-Fi or USB, and it would help you connect that way. The next thing I want to do is set my processing mode. So I've got the honeycomb in there with a piece of wood, but that is still known as process on base plate, even though my honeycomb is in it. I'm not doing a rotary, I'm not screen printing, nothing else. So process on base plate. Next up, let's pick a material. So this is true flat plywood, which isn't explicitly listed in here, but I'm going to pick this faux maple MDF and hit apply. So that's what I need right now. The next thing that I want to do is auto measure. So I'm just going to click this button and the machine will automatically measure the distance between the laser and the material. It's important, well, you can see the little red cross moving here. That's actually the laser moving back and forth. It was important to have that red cross that we saw in the machine right in the center of the material so we can accurately measure. Now on the S1, there is no camera. There is a marking system. So we are going to mark off the portion of the wood that we want to cut and engrave. So to do that, I'm going to click this little flag right here, and I'm going to bring up my marking functions. I am just going to mark off a rectangle, but there are other options here too. So I'm going to click on the rectangle. From here, I'm going to move that laser using the red crosshairs to the top left, then hit the button on the front of the machine. Now move it all the way down to the bottom right and click the button on the front of the machine. And I'm only marking off the area that's usable, so I'm going to ignore that part of the wood that I've already used. I've got my rectangle. I can hit end marking and then done. Now my screen changes a little bit. Everything I made has to fit in this rectangle. So I can just move my trees over. So we've auto measured. We've got our marking area done. Now we've got to choose some settings. So right now everything is set to score. So I'm going to come down to the bottom left, click on red because that's what I want to cut. And I'm going to set it to cut. Now we can go to one-click settings. And this is going to give me a really good idea of the power on the bottom and the speed on the left of what settings I need to pick. Now I know that if I do 100% power and a 10 speed, which is what they're recommending, then I'm going to get a little bit of extra char on this wood. So I'm actually going to go down to 90% power and 10 speed. It's still going to cut all the way through, but I'm at a little less char. Now we can pick the blue options, and we're going to engrave these. I can go to one-click setting here, but remember I said that true flat plywood isn't an exact setting within Studio. So I ran my own test array. And I do have a video on how to run a test array if you want to take a look, but it gave me a good idea of what kind of settings I want to pick. So instead of using the one-click set, I'm just going to manually change the power and the speed. So I'm going to use a power of 60 and a speed of 250. In this area, you could also change the passes or the lines per centimeter. You can also change the engraving mode. We're going to keep that at bidirectional. Now I'm going to place each of these names on the trees. And it does have some snap grids in here. So you can see as I move these around, they kind of line up automatically. I also have some buttons to help me align this. So the first thing I want to do is click on just the tree. And you see how the base and the tree are connected? I'm going to click this button up here. This is the ungroup button. Then I can select the tree and the name, come up to this alignment button here, and choose horizontal align center. So the name's going to align in the center just perfectly. I'm going to ungroup these other trees as well for the next step. So all the names are exactly where I want them. Let's make this one a little bit bigger. Now what I do want to do is combine each tree and name by grouping that together, but I'm not going to group the bottom part, just the tree and the name. I want to share with you a feature that I've used quite often. I'm going to start by dragging and selecting everything on my screen. Over here on the left is this application button. There's a lot of cool stuff in here. I want you to take a look at my in-depth studio video. I go through each and every one of these and what they do and how you can use them. But right now we're just going to use the smart nesting tool. This is going to help us get the most out of our material. So the marked off space that I have is roughly 13 by 8 inches. I am going to type that in, and there's some other options around here. I don't want to ungroup these pieces. I want the names to stay on the trees. I'm going to click Start Nesting, and then everything's selected. I can just drag this down into my marked area. But what it does is brings everything together in a way that is going to be really, really efficient for cutting all of this out. So we are ready to process. It's good to just check everything one more time. I've got my S1 connected. We're on the base plate. I've auto measured. My engrave settings are set. And then if I just click off onto the canvas, I can come back to these here. My cut settings are set and I'm ready to go. There is a preview button down here. This isn't super helpful for this specific project. It's just kind of going to show me what it might look like here. And then I can kind of spin it around and take a look at it. This is kind of helpful when you're doing like a tumbler or a 3D object that you want to engrave on, but we don't need it too much here. Just know that it's there. We are going to frame. I'm going to hit this framing button and I'm going to go to the machine and I'm going to hit the button on the machine. And this draws a rectangle on the wood. So I know exactly where it's cutting out to make sure that my marking and my cutting is correct. Everything looks great. Framing complete. Let's go to process. A couple things you can see here up on the top right. It gives us an estimated time. Then we can click View Preview Path. And if I come over here and say I want to make this 10 times and then hit play, this shows me exactly what the laser does and the order in which it does. The default order is going to be to engrave first and then cut. If you ever wanted to do this differently, there is a way to change that order within your layers. However, most of the time you do want to engrave first on a solid piece of wood and then cut it out, because after you cut, those pieces are going to move slightly. So this just shows us that it's going to go from left to right, engrave everything, and then cut it all out. I'm happy with that. Let's hit start. And it will not start automatically. I need to go over to that machine, click the button, stay in the area until it's completely done.
So the project is done. I like to leave the lid closed for a little bit and let some of that smoke in there get pulled out. The fan is still on the machine. It actually just shut off, but my inline fan over there is still running. So I am just gonna let this sit until most of that smoke gets pulled out. Wood does create a smell. It smells a little bit like a campfire. Even though this is closed and I have an inline fan and I'm vented, you're still gonna get a little bit of a smell. Don't have such a high expectation that you think there's going to be no smell. There will be a little bit of something, but it's not that bad if your ventilation is set up correctly. So if everything cut correctly, I should be able to just pull this off. And now I've got all my little pieces. So this is the top piece and the bottom piece slots. Oops, let's try another one. Slots right in there. And then I can set it on the table. So let's talk a little bit about cleanup. The engraving on this is fantastic. I did a test array. I love how that looks. I think it turned out great. It's actually got some depth to it. This wood is just beautiful. But I've got a little charring on the sides and it came through a little bit on the back. So I use baby wipes to start. This way I can easily clean up the back. And then I can come along the sides and just take off if there's any char that's still on there. So this is okay to do every now and then. However, if you are getting a good amount of char, you're going to want to adjust your settings. And so earlier I said I needed to knock my power down. I would probably bring it down just a little bit more because I really shouldn't get that much charring. So if you're getting it consistently, play around with your power and speed settings. After every laser project, clean up all of these little pieces. This is the biggest cause of fires or incomplete or just poor looking projects, is when you have all of this debris, it falls through this. You also want to pick up your honeycomb and then just take a damp cloth and wipe down your base plate underneath. If these sit in there, they can cause a fire. I do have a full in-depth video on how to clean your S1, and how often you do it depends on how many hours you put into it, but it's really important to take care of your machine and keep it clean. I think our little name cards, our little tree cards, turned out really cute. I'm going to use these for a holiday dinner. I love the way the engraving looks on the true flat plywood. As you get comfortable with your machine, I highly encourage you to try out all kinds of different materials that are compatible with a diode laser. This looks so much more high-end than if I had made this out of basswood. It just has a really good feel, really crisp engrave, and a nice cut line to it. My goal for this video was to walk you through a beginner-friendly project from start to finish so you can get familiar both with your machine and with xTool Studio software. So I really hope we accomplished that today. If you have any other questions, if I missed something, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to chat with you. I'm also going to link my xTool S1 playlist down there and the in-depth xTool Studio software video. So take a look at those. I go in-depth on all kinds of different things related to this machine. If you like this video, if you found it helpful, give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing. I am here every week with new videos to help you move forward in your creative journey. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.